go to bed.
Well, I do admit to taking a nap every day with my cat, so that definitely helps. Around 3 o'clock, I'm like, nah, brain can't brain right now. Like, must lay down with the cat. So
Let me back my camera up a little bit.
Wait, I'll just go for make sure I'm being paid.
Philip, put you on the bottom. Put the two pretty ladies on top. We talked about this.
Just give us a moment there.
There
How's that
we
one?
go. Yeah.
I have a fan heater going. Can you hear it?
No, actually, I can't.
Okay, good, because it's absolutely Baltic in here. I could see my breath, so I put the fan
Oh my
heater
God.
on. That's why I'm wearing my big bra, because I'm just like,
where are you? That it's
I'm out of my workshop. So it's got electricity, but it doesn't have like an internal source of heating. So I just bring out a fan heater in the winter. But like normally I'm just here on my own listening to YouTube videos while I sew. So I'm not usually broadcasting or live streaming to have to worry about the sound of it.
Well, we can't hear it, but also I used to work in my garage. My garage used to be my office, and it also didn't have heaters. So I had two of those fans.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. Okay. Well, Philip, I think we're ready to go when you are.
Yeah, I'm just going over to make sure I'm being paid. That's the main thing right now.
That's a good point.
Flying over.
You can actually set that set it to be the default. Not that always works.
I know, right? Live. Yeah, I'm being paid. That's good. That's the main thing. That's the most important thing of all right now.
It really is.
All right, pop over. Oh, geez, we're already full of comments. Hi, Kevin. How are you keeping? You're doing today, Kevin?
Are we full of comments? Oh, wow. Yeah, we are.
I know, right? Caveman, everything. First thing. And then Jim O'Neill's in there as well. Hey, Philip, I'll take a big glass of Violet. Oh, I enjoy away, Jim. Can you all hear us fine? Can you? Philip, if you look carefully at the woodcuts, there are one. I didn't put the woodcuts in today. I should have actually chucked in the woodcuts for you.
I think I sent you one of the Derek woodcuts to show the Shinron on a poor woman.
Yeah.
If you've got time to look through the emails.
Yeah, just give us a second there.
I'm looking for the woodcut there that Kevin is talking about. I don't think it's actually... No.
In the folder?
No, I've got Dress in Ireland in case I needed to cite or quote anything. There are quite a few of Derek's woodcuts in here, but not the one he's talking about, the prisoners. I know it. I can see it in my mind's eye. I'm very familiar with it. No, I don't have it here in front of me.
That tucking up pre-seizure as well. He's Kevin, the one you're talking about, that's kilting up, isn't it? That's referred to as kilting up.
Yeah.
His tunic is also tucked up higher. When you do that, that's kilting up, because this Rachel told me that. I didn't know that before. Rachel was just like, and that's the process of kilting up. And I was like, what? That's what kilting is?
Yep, that is what kilting is. Women did it first.
Men stealing from women again, huh?
They are. They're like, wow, those women are clever. Can we do that?
Oh yeah, you're talking about O'Connor's effigy where he's not kilted up and just tripping over everything.
Yep.
Google.
Okay, I'm going to turn off the heater for a bit. All right, until I can start seeing my breath again. Then.
Oh, are we actually live? I thought
we were live. That's why the numbers are coming over.
You're just getting dressed on here.
Oh no, this is part of my shtick.
That's usually what I do too.
People like watching the getting dressed process, so
they do. when I start a talk, I usually start out in some sort of wrapper or morning gown, or, you know, a dressing gown, we would call it nowadays. And then the first thing I do is whip that off and show the stays or the corset or the kirtle underneath. And that usually grabs people's attention real fast.
It
It
does.
does. Yeah, showing up in nothing but my camecha nearly always gets the algorithm really happy. And then some people complain because I'm wearing a bra underneath, and I'm like, yes, because I don't want to be banned by YouTube. So
You don't want to
because without it, you can see through the camecha in these lights.
Yes, indeed.
It's like, you people, I'm not, yeah. Please understand the world in which we operate.
Exactly.
Yeah, so Philip, are you going to kick this party off, or are we just going to chat here randomly for the next hour?
Well, I thought that was the plan, no? Right. Hey guys, how are you all keeping? Today, I've got a very special guest. Well, two of them actually, if you want to count the two of them all together. But regardless, welcome to Irish Medieval History. Today, I am joined by Dr. Melissa Shields, who will be covering 16th century Anglo-Irish clothing, in particular the clothing of the Desmond Fitzgeralds. I actually have your nice little dressy here, if anybody's curious. What I'll do is chuck you down here. I have Rachel there dancing away, but I actually might switch over to, if I put you over to this one here, and then put Melissa down here. Don't want to drag. There we go. And then I can have Melissa in here. So this is kind of your main dress of the Desmond Fitzgerald. Kildare Fitzgerald, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken. Kildare. Yeah. I was there saying Desmond Fitzgerald. Yeah. Kildare. It's because the other project that myself and Rachel is doing is on 15th century clothing to do with the Desmond Fitzgeralds, and that's why the two of us are getting mixed up. On the flip side, on your hand, Melissa Shields is covering Elizabeth Fitzgerald. Melissa, could you tell us a little bit about what was it? This dress here. What's the history behind it, and who is Lady Fitzgerald?
Yeah. So the dress that you see there before you, that's a recreation of Elizabeth Fitzgerald Clinton. Who's one of her She was married twice. And I made a recreation of that gown earlier this year in January, spilling into February. It took about 6 or 7 weeks to make it. So basically, I wanted to recreate that portrait because that is my favorite gown, and she is my favorite historical person. She was incredibly influential. So she was born to the 9th Earl of Kildare. Her father was Gearóid Og, so the younger, Gearóid the younger. And basically, he was the Lord Deputy of Ireland for most of his life. And he had an elder son named Thomas, who, when Gearóid was called away to court to answer for his financial, what shall we say, misdeeds, that his son Thomas was basically left in charge of the Dublin administration. And this was in 1534. And I'm not going to go into the politics of it all, but he rebelled, and basically the rebellion was brutally quashed. And Thomas, he was known as Silken Thomas, and all of his uncles were executed. They were beheaded in Tower Hill in 1537. It was effectively to stamp out the power of the Kildare Earls. Now, there was a younger half-brother who was Elizabeth's full brother, and he basically was a fugitive at the age of between 9 and 11. He was spirited away all over Ireland by the auspices of his aunt, Eleanor Fitzgerald. And he was actually in Desmond for a while under the protection of the Earl of Desmond and McCarthy Moore, and then eventually O'Donnell Manus O'Donnell up in Donegal, whereupon he was dressed in Gaelic Irish clothing to hide him amongst the young lads of the O'Donnell lordship, and then was spirited away to France and there made his way to Rome. And he was in exile there for several years before he came back to the court in England and was forgiven and all of that stuff reinstated as Earl. After being reinstated as Earl, he was accused of treason. And it was his sister, Elizabeth, who was best friends with Queen Elizabeth, because she was raised in the royal nursery with the future queen after the attainder of her house. And she used gift giving and her friendship with the queen to persuade the queen that her brother was not guilty of treason. Now, I want to make it very clear that the Gaelic lords, they also had the latest English fashions. They also had the latest continental fashions. Because in looking at the, particularly, let's say, Shane O'Neill, I'll use him as one example. Some of you are probably familiar with him. When Shane O'Neill was assassinated in 1567, his inheritor, his Taoiseach, Lachlan O'Neill, he had to do basically an inventory of all of Shane's goods. And on Shane's fortress at Loughney, he obviously had a magnificent wardrobe, about between 20 and 30 of the most sumptuous, latest European fashions, English fashions, Spanish fashions, Dutch fashions. So basically this accusation that the Gaelic Irish were backwards, that they were sartorially stuck in, the long ago past, was really disproved, because we can see that they act like Janis O'Donnell had the latest fashions when he met up with Lord Deputy St. Leger. Shane O'Neill, when his inventory, was compiled after his assassination, he had all the latest. And the Earl of Desmond and his Countess, Eleanor Butler Fitzgerald, they also had quite a hybrid wardrobe of courtly fashions and Gaelic fashions. And the most interesting spectacle of this, I think, happens in 1573/1574. So, I know there's a lot of background noise. I think it might
Sorry
be on
about
Rachel's.
that. Rachel, can you turn off your sound there for a second?
Turn off my sound? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that, Rachel.
No, that's okay. There's no noise here, so that's kind of weird. Hold on.
Well, let's try that and see if that works. Okay.
Yeah, because there is banging or something. Yeah.
Done it. Okay. So one interesting example we know of hybrid fashions of, say, the Earls of Desmond was in 1568, the Earl of Desmond, who was called Garrett, he was also Garrod, but to avoid confusion between all the Geralds, because there's only 5 names. So Garrett Fitzgerald, the Earl of Desmond, he was basically taken to the Tower in 1568, and there he was imprisoned for 5 years. So basically, he was then sent to Dublin, and instead of being released and making his way home, he was further imprisoned in Dublin Castle, while the Lord Deputy decided to add more basically conditions to his release. So he was kind of kept there in prison for quite a few months, and then he made a jailbreak. And with the help of the O'Briens and with the help of several lords, they got him all the way from Dublin basically to his lordship. And it took a while, but they managed to do it. So when he got to the borders of his lordship at Lochgur, and I don't know if you've ever been to Lochgur, Philip, but it's already quite a magical place. It's the place where Gearóid Iarla, his ancestor, was meant to have disappeared into the under the waves of Lochgur. And, legendarily or mythically, they were supposed to be from the goddess Anya, who was the goddess of Lochgur. So it's very important that it was Lochgur where this happened. It said he went with his yeoman, Maurice Sheehan, and they went to Lochgur, and there he was met by the Countess and his tenants. And there they both changed from English attire into their Irish clothing. And there he made proclamation, basically saying that I'm the law, I'm back, I'm back in my homeland, I'm back in my lordship, I'm the law, not these, these English Lord Deputies. And sorry, I had a notification there, that was very loud. But like this had to take some planning because, they had to bring the clothing for the Earl. The Countess had to make sure that not only did she have Irish clothing, but she was wearing English clothing to then change into Irish clothing as a form of spectacle, as a form of, in addition to this proclamation, throwing off the English clothing and donning Irish attire to kind of proclaim their own autonomy again, both sartorially and politically. So like obviously they must have both had both English clothing, courtier style clothing, and Irish clothing to do this transformation, this very public transformation. So yeah, like the clothing that I've got on, the clothing I have behind me on a mannequin, these would be the Gaelic styles, which I can stand up and talk about if you want.
Yeah, sure. What I could do actually is, if you want to stand up and show us Gaelic clothing, you're more than welcome to.
So actually, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I switched to my head. I realized I wasn't wearing a headset. So I actually have questions because here in my quest to understand 15th century and earlier Irish fashions, I've been desperately looking for inventories, Melissa, and I'm not finding them in the 15th century. Are you aware? I mean, anything, expense accounts, inventories. I found some wills, but only in like Dublin and Waterford and Wexford.
Yeah.
So are you aware of any such documents from the 15th century?
From the 15th century, unfortunately, no. Like
Fair
wills
enough.
are going to be the best. I do know that Gearóid Moore, so the 8th Earl of Kildare, I know that he gifted some cloth of gold garments to a particular church, and that it was made into, I believe, altar cloths or vestments. So we know he had cloth of gold garments, but what shape they took, that's it's anybody's guess. It just said that a donation was made, an offertory was made, not what the clothing looked like originally.
No, I'm a primary source girl, so I'm interested. Like if I'm looking for the sources themselves, so how, where are, for example, that gift that bequest that you just quoted? Do you know where that is contained?
It's in a very old book and it's out of publication, but it's on like archive.org. So you can 100% get that for free. I will have to go back and open up my Google Drive and find it to tell you, because I downloaded the whole book. So you can also download the whole book. So I can send you that message afterwards.
Fantastic.
Once I find it. I don't remember off the top of my head.
No, that's fantastic. Internetarchive.org is a wonderful resource. It is.
Love it.
It is fantastic.
I think if you want to look at, say, 15th century, Sparky Booker, she's an academic. She writes a lot about the 15th century in particular and the Pale and that sort of thing. She actually published an article a couple of years ago. I remember reading it during my thesis. So kind of anything written by Sparky Booker. I know she was doing research on wills and clothing because we were part of a conference a couple of years ago, and she said she was looking at, I think, some 15th century wills, and what she noticed, she was looking at marriage practices, and she noticed how women often still kept their maiden name even though they were married. And I said, well, I had been looking at Cork wills from the 1570s and 1580s, and that I still noticed that the practice was for even married women to be known by their maiden names. So that was a couple of years ago, so possibly she's come out with something in the meantime. But if you Google her and look at her publication, you might find stuff, and then obviously dig through the footnotes and see if you can find
the footnotes are the place. Everyone always asks me, how do you find all these primary sources? I said, I read the footnotes.
Read the footnotes. Exactly. Like, what archive is this? Here, flipping back between pages to see what archive it is, and then you email them.
Like that. That's how. And also, I'd like to just put out there, people who use endnotes are evil, and there's a special circle of hell for them. I hate endnotes with a passion. Hate them so much. Footnotes, everyone. Footnotes.
Yeah, I want it on the page I'm looking at. I don't want have to flip back and forth and be like, oh, page 127. I need to go back here to find out what notes are on page 127. Like, oh, so much longer. So much longer.
It is.
I'll just answer a quick question there off the comment section, which is asking about the kilt, which at this period going into the late, well, actually during the 16th century, isn't it, the great kilt appears? But the main focus is really the brats, isn't it?
Yeah. So the great, and I want people to be careful. When you imagine a great kilt, everyone imagines this very specific thing, but it at the end of the 16th century, it hasn't achieved that shape yet, right? At the end of the 16th century, it's basically a big rectangle of fabric, and some men got the clever idea to belt it around their garments and kind of wrap it around themselves, but it doesn't have that, that form that most people are imagining. It doesn't have all those neat pleats. It doesn't, it's just, we're not there yet. We're at it's cold. We've got this giant rectangle of fabric. What can we do to keep it on our bodies so that we as men can still do our men things in a day-to-day basis,
I see Mir Kala Kernstein is saying, I'm not sure there are pockets in that style of dress. The reproduction pattern I followed didn't clean them. Do you mean the Shinron gown that I'm wearing? Is that the style of dress you're referring to? If so, no. Inset pockets were not a thing yet at this time. And if we look at images from the period, we can actually see that women carried their bits and bobs, like coins or what have you, maybe a handkerchief, in a pouch that was suspended from their girdle, which is a belt. And in fact, one of the images, which I'm flicking through my very dilapidated copy of Dress in Ireland, you can see here, this girl is wearing essentially what we call the Shinron gown. And there is a pouch suspended from her girdle. So inset pockets, not a thing at this time.
Yeah. And it's funny because in the 14th century, there's this style for this, a coat that goes over top of all the other gowns, and it has slits because ladies wore their girdles underneath of it. And so you could access your pouches through that slit, but everyone sees those slits and they say, look, pockets. And I'm like, no, not pockets. Not pockets. Just slits.
Oh, well, I'm so used to 18th century of accessing pockets, my tie-on pockets through the slit in my petticoat. So I'm like,
everyone wants those everyone asks me, what about the tie-on pockets? No, sorry, not yet. We're not there yet.
So do we want to discuss Gaelic Irish clothing, since I'm standing here with only one layer of linen on my arms? So
fly ahead. To be honest with you, I love all of it, to be honest with you. So don't pause for anything. I know Rachel would have specific questions, because I'm going to be honest with you all, guys. If you haven't noticed right now, I'm droning here because this is way out of my field of expertise. Get me back over to the military side, please. Get me the old swords and sticks. Anytime we'd be at living history events, Melissa would be pushing me into the battlefield, and for good reason. When it comes down to the likes of my wife and all, Melissa and her clique, it would be one side. My side would be over in the battlefield. So I am slightly drowning. So Melissa, if you want to fly away there, you're more than welcome. There was just a few stuff there that you were saying there that literally clicked on my brain there. Another thing is this is more or less taking it from the perspective of the 16th century. I'm not sure about the 15th century, but it seems that there is starting to get a proper divide between Irish clothing and English clothing, especially going into the Irish Parliament. Like, what kind of clothing are they taking it from the perspective of the 16th century? Are they wearing English clothing going into the Irish Parliament and then going into the Tudor court? And then is it a case of a slight hatred and despisal when they're going into having to have to wear English clothing? Like, it seems like I was talking to Mihal from Clans and Dynasties and stuff, and he himself seems to highlight the fact that there's, especially off the likes of the Bergs and stuff, of them taking their clothes off the moment they leave the Irish Parliament with pride.
Yep.
Is there a hatred from the Irish lords wearing our English clothing, and why is that? Like, what's the difference that there seems to be a hatred there?
So we don't have any Gaelic Irish lords writing down and saying that they hate English clothing. All we have is their behavior to look at.
Okay,
and we can make assumptions based on that. And oftentimes, though, the behavior is written about from an agent of Dublin Castle. So you always have to remember the source of the person who's writing this down and be like, okay, why are they saying this? Is it even true, for a start?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you 2 examples of Anglo-Irish political actors who supposedly, according to the people who recorded this, performed sartorial violence on English clothing as an act of rebellion.
Yeah.
So the first one that we have is in the 1560s. It was, I think it's Edward Butler. He was one of the younger brothers of Thomas Butler, the 10th Earl of Ormond. And he had a problem with Lord Deputy Sidney, and he really had a problem with Sir Peter Carew, who was trying to take over Edward's lands in Idrone, in like Kilkenny, Carlow sort of area. And so he went into rebellion, and he teamed up with actually a Gaelic Irish lord, whose name escapes me at this moment, but I'm sure somebody will help us in the comments. So they teamed up together, went on a little rebellious streak. And of course, the English agents who wrote about this said that the Butler's younger brother and the other fella he teamed up with, the Gaelic lord, that they stripped dead English soldiers of their clothing, stuffed the clothing with straw, and then set them up for the cairn to throw their darts at for target practice. So that basically they wouldn't let anybody come near them if they were dressed in English style clothing. Problem is, at the time, the people who first reported Butler's rebellion mentioned none of this at all. And the only detailed description I have of this is from Sidney 20 years after the fact, when he was writing a defense of how he governed Ireland, because he was under severe attack at court for how he had governed Ireland during his time. So at a distance of 20 years, it seems the story has grown legs. Now, unless a letter hasn't survived from the period where he got this story from, I mean, it's entirely possible that this happened, but it is kind of suspect that it's not written about at the time by an eyewitness or even a secondhand witness. It's written 20 years later by somebody who's defending his government. The other example that you gave of the Bergs, and that was in 1577 or 76.
Okay.
2 sons of the Earl of Clanrickard were rebelling all around them. They were taken into custody. Sidney was parading them around in chains to show them off as prisoners, and making them submit to him in like every town and city that he took them to as a spectacle of public humiliation. And then they broke free, and it said that they went to the banks of the Shannon, and there they took off their English clothing and they cut it to pieces, and that they said, this is what we make of our English clothing. And basically, this is what we make of our oath and our promise to be loyal subjects. So it was like a sartorial act of defiance to symbolize their act of political defiance. Again, the problem is, I looked at a couple of letters who were written by people from Athenry and from Galway, so near to where this story took place. They were the ones informing Dublin Castle of the Earl's son's escape. And in their letters, they did not mention anything about the 2 sons going, this is what we make of our oaths, as they cut up their clothing on the banks of the Shannon. So again, that story only appears many years later, and it's grown legs in the meantime. So what I kind of, I mentioned these 2 incidents, and also the Earl of Desmond changing clothes at Lochgur, which was basically an eyewitness account and was written about immediately afterwards. What I say is, like, the ability to reject English-style clothing seems only to have been important for those who could afford it in the if you're a peasant who doesn't have clothing, if you're a peasant who strips the bodies of survivors that wash up from the Spanish Armada and even strips, the dead of their clothing, if you can't get, if you're cold and don't have any way to clothe yourself, you don't give a shit what you're wearing. It's only if it's financially and politically important enough for you to make that statement that that we see it. We do see again stories of, like, say, when Con Bacach O'Neill, after he submitted to Lord Deputy St. Leger and made his journey to the court, and there he was dressed in cast-off clothing of Henry himself, and Henry gave cast-off clothing to all the men who were with him. Then we've got a critic of that program of surrender and regrant saying basically, well, I've only seen Con Bacach O'Neill come to Parliament in English-style clothing, and then he changes at his home in Balgriffin in Dublin and goes back to Tyrone wearing Irish clothing. So attending Parliament, it was actually, like, I won't say the law, but it was the rule that you had to attend in English-style clothing. And when Sir John Parrott was Lord Deputy in the 1580s, he actually gave gifts of English clothing to the parliamentarians attending, to those attending the Parliament, I should say. Parliamentarian is a different thing. To basically force them to wear English-style clothing. But again, we have this really famous, funny scene of Turlough Linna. Theoretically, it could have been somebody else, but it was most likely him, saying that, well, can we make this priest over here, which was actually like an English Protestant chaplain, but he called him a priest. Can we make the priest wear essentially Irish clothing, and then the boys in the street will laugh at him as much as they laugh at me? So there was definitely an antipathy to wearing English style clothing, but I think it's because clothing is a form of messaging. It's a form of signaling your identity, who you are, and in this case, your autonomy. Your autonomy as a Gaelic lord, and not merely as an English subject to wear what you want, and to be seen and respected as a Gaelic lord.
Are we allowed to give opinions, or are we going to stick to, we can only say facts? Because I'm just curious, maybe we'll get Rachel's opinion in there. Is this a thing that just builds up over time? How, because myself and Rachel were talking about this, and we don't think this is the case in the 15th century. Maybe Rachel will correct me on our opinion, but I feel like in the 15th century, this isn't such a big thing of Gaelic versus English clothing. But I feel like going into the 16th century right now, I feel like, and this is my opinion right now, is I feel as though it's something that gets worse over time. That going into the early 16th century, Gaelic versus English clothing doesn't really exist. But then obviously there is differences there, but it doesn't become a thing until, it's something that grows over time and definitely gets worse in 1534. And then definitely by the time... Yeah,
the 16th century is a period of ramping up, and we see this in the sheer amount of sumptuary laws all over Europe that are enacted in the 16th century. Like, it's just ratcheting it up to a massive level, and that's because you've got merchants becoming very wealthy, and you've got and they're dressing like nobles, and the nobles, of course, don't want this, and they want a class distinction to remain visible through dress, but you've also got larger states, shall we say, larger nations, but they're not nations yet, taking over or absorbing smaller states nearby. And so you actually do see kind of like a backlash in a lot of places of retaining older styles and almost more ethnic signifiers to say, like, well, you might want to gobble us up, but this is who we are. And, whereas prior to that, a lot of the sumptuary laws enacted in Ireland, at least, were because the English of Ireland, who were settled here, they were wearing Gaelic Irish clothing. And so because you could essentially kind of seize or kill, if you could call them a rebel, and you could seize them, kill them, or what have you. The authorities, the powers that be, were afraid that an English person dressed like an Irish person would be killed because they would be mistaken for a rebel, and therefore that this would cause huge ructions in, you know, in the Pale and like Kilkenny and places like that. Because there'd be lawsuits and disharmony and all sorts of, you know, fragmentation of society. So the whole point is to enforce social cohesion. But it really ramps up in the 16th century because England, starting really with Henry VIII, or even Henry VII, is so damn paranoid because they're so damn isolated because of divorce and, you know, making the Church of England and declaring himself the supreme head of the Church of England and all this sort of stuff. And I mean, always at war with France and Spain, but now really left alone and isolated. And as we both know, Ireland is so close to the west coast of England. And basically, like going back to Gerard of Wales, he said on a good day, it's a day's sailing. And, you know, Henry, so utterly terrified that Ireland was going to be the springboard for invasion, either for France or Spain, to land in Ireland and just launch themselves. And of course, it happened in his father's time with both Perkin Warbeck and Lambert Simnel. So, I mean, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean people aren't plotting against you.
Yeah, I was going to say Henry VII was paranoid, but is it really paranoia if it's true? If your fears are founded?
Exactly.
He had every right to be extremely cautious and concerned and anxious. Even you know, if you look at his death mask, Henry VII's death mask, you can see all of the cares and worries of the world that had just etched themselves into deep lines on his face. He wasn't old when he died. I mean, he died. I'm confident he died of a stress attack, right? He also died of. I mean, Elizabeth died, and he was absolutely heartbroken. So that was probably part of it. But seriously, if there was anyone in English history who deserved to be paranoid, it was Henry VII, and because he knew that his grip on the throne was purely right of arm. I mean, mostly right of arms. Like his blood claim. His blood claim was so tenuous that it was almost invisible, right?
And if he could win by right of conquest, somebody else could too. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was. I don't blame him, but you know, Melissa, I absolutely agree with what you're saying about the Statutes of Kilkenny being more about we need to know who's Irish and who's English because we don't want to accidentally kill Englishmen. And I keep trying to harp on this. I'm like, one of the main statutes in the Statutes of Kilkenny is hair and facial hair. They're like, we need you to shave at least every 2 weeks so we know you're not Irish with that beautiful Irish beard and those beautiful Irish locks, right? Like, and the language even refers to the enemy, not. I keep trying to tell Philip this. They're not talking about the wild Irish in the 14th century. That's not a term yet. They're talking about the enemy, not some, uncivilized people. They're just worried about, well, if we mistake you for a Gael and you're in the Pale because we'll think you're raiding and we'll think you're up to no good. So then we're just going to slaughter you out of hand. So we need to know that you're English. Please look English for us.
I have to turn the heating on again.
It's amazing for me the amount of research that Rachel has done, and you can see the foundation of that there. But then as we go into the 16th century, we can see that escalation. And now we can see where people are getting their interpretation from. But the problem is that when I'm reading a lot of historians and academics, they're talking about, they just kind of brand the 15th century and the 16th century as the same. But now that I've gotten the two of you together and we're having this discussion, I'm getting a completely different picture to what a lot of these books and stuff are saying.
The other thing that people seem to forget, and I don't know why, because it's massive in world history, is the Reformation is happening in the 16th century, right? Henry creates his own church and he says, I'm now the Pope. And the Irish are like, no, you are not.
Yeah.
And so that alone creates this massive divide that wasn't really there. It wasn't there before. Before they were unified by more or less a common church. Now they're divided by a non-common church. So that also creates mass, and that, of course, that
the Catholicism of the Irish is an issue that just gets more and more dividing as the decades and centuries wear on. So yeah, I think people need to, I wish people would, one, stop applying the 16th century to the centuries that precede it, but also, as Melissa said, and I love you for saying this, Melissa, we have to look at the sources. Who is saying these things? Who is writing these things? And when are they doing that? Right? Because if you're writing 20, 30 years later, even if you're writing just a couple of years later, that memories are plastic. The reasons you could be saying that so-and-so took their sword and rent their English garments asunder could have nothing to do with what actually happened and everything to do with trying to make a political statement.
For sure.
As a favorite YouTuber of mine says, remember the source, consider the motive. So
exactly.
It's a really good motto for life.
Yeah, and you know, Philip sent me something, and I said, "What's the source for that?" And he said, "Well, it's someone writing in the 18th century." And I'm like, "Eh."
Exactly.
Why no, won't even read it. Sorry.
Read the imagination of some 18th century dudes, like fever dream, you know.
Yeah, right. You know, and politicized fever dream. So it's like real bad.
Exactly. I mean, it always tells you. It's like they say, science fiction is really about our society's current anxieties and fears and what have you. And I think the same can be said of like antiquarians and historians at that time. You know, like they're very much looking at the history that they had access to through their current lens, and even how they could almost write the history in a way to push their current point of how their, like, say, the 18th century society should be, you know. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I feel like we've gone wildly off topic, but
oh no, that's perfectly fine.
That is what these streams do, Melissa. Welcome to our world.
No. I think it's perfectly fine because you're still elaborating within what I actually want you guys to cover. Also, on top of that as well, Melissa, you were talking about gift giving there earlier. And I know there's myself and Rachel yesterday for our little project that we started, which goes back to what Wayne was saying there. Wayne was giving out slightly, but why I wasn't dressed up. And funny you should say that, Wayne, because myself and Rachel, time for a bit of advertisement on our side, have actually got a GoFundMe up and set up to have me dressed up as Seamus MacTomod from the 15th century, the late 15th century, during the period of the Wars of the Roses in Ireland. But the reason why I also bring that up now is the fact that in that period, around 1460, Richard III sends, Seamus a gift over, and that gift there is English, what was called very, very beautiful clothing and everything. What's the likelihood that Seamus would have worn that, and was it a thing of trying to encourage him to go to the Irish Parliament because, you know, quote unquote, he was dressed Irish? Would he have been allowed at this point to dress Irish into the Irish Parliament, or did he have to wear set clothing because of the Statutes of Kilkenny and stuff? I know this slightly touches off what we were saying before.
I looked at that gift-giving instance because when I was starting my thesis, that was one of the first things I came across. And I wanted to look at like early Tudor or even, you know, pre-Tudor forms of monarchical giving to Irish lords. And effectively, that was pretty early at the start of Richard III's admittedly short reign. And he wanted, so the Earl wasn't married, and they wanted him to marry like a good, either an English woman or a woman of the Pale, that sort of thing, because their marriage practices tended, the Earls of Desmond tended a lot to marry with the O'Briens of Clare. So basically, and he also wrote to the Earl of Kildare at the time, and he was saying, look, you did such a great job getting your sister married to Con Bacach O'Neill. See if you can kind of interfere with your cousin down in Desmond and work out a marriage down there in kind of the Crown's interests. So he sent this huge, actually it was quite a lot of clothing. I don't know if I've got time to go into my thesis right now and
Oh no, it's
go
grand.
list, but it was quite an impressive array of clothing, and I've kind of drawn a question mark over whether this was clothing new made or whether it was clothing that Richard III had worn himself. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you.
Yep.
I can hear you fine.
All right, Grant, because I'm opening up my files here to get my thesis.
Yeah. So that bequest is mentioned, of course, in Dunleavy's work.
Yes.
And I was right, which I meant to go and check the footnote on that one to see if there was a footnote, because of course it's very important to me, again, to get to the primary source. Because
her footnoting is kind of dire.
It's terrible. It's
ill of the
so
dead.
terrible.
It leaves a lot to be desired.
I will tell you, I curse a lot when reading her book. There's a lot of foul language.
Yeah,
to the effect of, God damn it, woman, why can't you use footnotes like a real scholar?
I know. Well, clothing actually wasn't her specialty. It was like ceramics.
What?
But I mean, still the.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, love the woman. She did great. She did, some great preliminary work, but it is very much an overview. It is not comprehensive by any means. And I found several mistakes, which I've corrected in my thesis. So, just translation errors, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where she
well, this excuse me, sorry.
The primary source, and I'm like, that's not actually what was that's not what was said at all. So
yeah. See, and that's why this is going to sound very arrogant, but I don't trust other people's work. That's because I'm actually, my profession is a translator, so I trebly don't trust other scholars' work when it comes to translations. I'm like, no, I want to see the original Latin, please. Let me see.
Absolutely.
Let me see your original Latin. I've got this cookbook here, a 15th century cookbook from one of the Pope's cooks in the 15th century. And they thankfully provide the original terrible macaronic Latin and the translation, because I'm like, oh baby, that is not what that means in Latin. I'm sorry, but your English translation is real bad.
It's appalling.
So so I hate to say that because it sounds so arrogant, but I've just gotten burned by bad translation. And then of course the problem of the interpretation. This is something a lot of people who read history books don't understand, is that when you translate, you automatically interpret, because you have to find the meaning in the sentence. So your own bias automatically goes into your translation. And so if you really want to get to the truth, you do have to kind of learn to speak a bunch of different languages.
Yeah, I mean, I remember transcribing a very long letter wherein some personal effects of the Earl and Countess of Desmond were basically seized as they were in the Second Desmond Rebellion, and they were sent to the Queen as a gift. And I really had wanted to write about trophies as gifts, and that particular facet of giving something taken from an enemy or seized from an enemy, that sort of thing.
Right.
And so I was transcribing this thing. It was like 16 pages long, which is massively long. And then after transcribing it all, there was a couple of words where I was really sticking for ages. And then after I transcribed the thing, I found like a Victorian transcription of it. And I was comparing my transcription against theirs. And I was like, oh my God, they actually really shit the bed in a couple of places where they used a very Victorian viewpoint. There was 2 words describing a woman, the sister of the Countess of Desmond. And they said that she was a buxom, something like that. And it actually said, the writer actually said she was a very civil woman. And I was like, wow, Victorians, tell yourselves there, aren't you?
Buxom.
So yeah, just describing her physically, whereas the original author was describing her, her demeanor and her civility and all of that sort of thing. Oh,
So that letter that you're mentioning. So again, I'm having real issues finding that kind of correspondence in the 15th century. Why does so much more seem to survive from the 16th century? Were those documents not in the archives that went up in flames in Dublin in the 20s, or where are those kinds of documents to be found? Letters and whatnot, correspondence.
Why I chose the 16th century, because there is so much more documentation.
I see. I get the picture.
A lot of it is in English, and I didn't have to necessarily learn Latin to be able to read things myself. So I don't know if there's a paucity of sources or if they were destroyed. I mean, I also am just really fascinated. I really love the clothing of the 16th century. I like the clothing of the 15th century too. I've made houppelande. I've made beautiful things, 15th century things, and a hennin and all of that. But I don't know, I just really like 16th century clothing. And if I like the clothing of an era, I tend to be really fascinated with it.
The 16th century makes me so sad that I can't make the clothes from it. It's such a terrible century.
About the 17th century, it's so depressing.
Oh, it's even worse. It just gets worse.
And the clothes are just ugly. So I'm just like, no, I hate the clothing, and therefore, I know this is not a very academic opinion, but if I don't like the clothing that the people wore, I just don't want anything to do with them. I'm like, you had no good taste. So no. Why do I want to listen to anything you have to say?
This is a judgment-free zone. I feel what you are saying.
True, like.
Okay, so the gift. Oh, here we go. Oh, I transcribed it. Well done, me. So, Richard III sent James Fitzgerald, 9th Earl of Desmond, a long gown of cloth of gold lined with satin or damask, a long gown of velvet lined with satin or damask, 2 doublets, one of velvet and another of crimson satin, 3 pair of hosen, one of scarlet, another violet, and the third black, 3 bonnets, 2 hats, and 2 tippets of velvet. Yeah. Now, so this is in, basically, that was in September 1484, and that's in Letters and Papers of Richard III and Henry VIII, which again is because it's well past the, the publishing 100-year thing.
Right.
So, but the thing that I was wondering when I looked at that was, for instance, when it says a long gown of cloth of gold lined with satin or damask, and I'm sitting there scratching my brain going,
don't they know?
Is this a warrant to the Great Wardrobe to make a long gown of cloth of gold and to line it either with satin or damask, depending on how the tailor feels? Or is the king basically saying, I've got so many of these gowns that you can pick a gown of cloth of gold and pick one that's either lined with satin or damask? I can't quite tell. But I mean, I think the pair of hosen, the king is not going to give his worn hose. There are certain things,
like
outer garments are given, but not the underwear. Yeah. Whereas hats, bonnets, that's all fine. The gowns, the doublets, that could be new made, or it could be pre-worn. My personal inclination, if I'm going to go out on a limb here, is to say they were pre-worn because, and I explore this in my thesis quite a bit, is that, am I still looking at can you see me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you're a main one. Yeah. Sorry.
My inclination is that there's pre-worn because they believed that clothing was not just an expression of your intersecting identities, your gender, your age, your religion, your occupation, your status. That's all well and good. People should be able to see who you are at a glance, right? And that's why sumptuary laws existed. But they also believed that clothing would impress certain characteristics upon the wearer. So if you wore clothing from another country, like if you were English and you were wearing a load of French fashions, they thought that would make you disloyal to your own monarch and make you more loyal to France. And that is why, again, they wanted the English of Ireland to look English and not Gaelic Irish. So I think when Henry VIII did the same thing, when he gave gifts of clothing to all the lords, well, most of the lords who surrendered in the 1540s, he always gave gifts of his own clothing because they believed regifting was not at all like a dirty word like we kind of think it is nowadays. Like, oh my God, I gave you a candle for Christmas and you gave it to Jenna down the road or whatever. It wasn't like that. Gifting was almost expected. And if you were of the higher status, and of course there's nobody higher than the king, if you were of the higher status, that clothing was imbued with your honor. It was impregnated with your honor. And so he was therefore drawing these previously rebellious lords into his honor circle and hoping to impress his will on the Irish lords who submitted, that they would act in accordance to his desires, that his honor imbued in this clothing would like overawe them and would make them act according to his wishes. And I don't think that Richard III would have been any different. I don't think that idea was particularly new in the 1540s. So I, without any other substantiating evidence to the contrary, would believe that, except for probably the hosen, which would be new made, potentially, that most of those things that Richard III gave to the Earl of Desmond were possibly his own clothing. And he was hoping that he would marry somebody sympathetic to the English crown and that he would act, you know, in the way the crown wanted, going to Parliament, all that sort of thing. It wasn't successful. We don't know if the Earl of Desmond ever wore these clothing, but we do know that he married a daughter of the O'Brien.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the other important thing that people forget is, especially in the 15th century, the English kings are mostly all feeling not exactly secure in their position, right? So Richard III, you know, he takes over the crown on even more tenuous ground. And he has made himself very unpopular with about half of the kingdom by doing what he did. And so for him, it's definitely, I feel it's not about, well, I need you to be more English. In his cases, I need you to be my man, right? I need you to support me, to be in my corner, so that when the next pretender comes along, you will be in my court, right? This is my impression. This is not about Irish versus English. This is about us versus them, whoever they are.
I think it's a numbers game. He needed as many supporters as possible. And the Earl of Desmond was powerful and could, you know, make or break a campaign.
Yeah, absolutely.
He desperately needed numbers. So he was like, okay, I got Kildare. He's gotten O'Neill on side. If we can get Fitzgerald down in Desmond, like, you know, maybe I can stay on this throne a little bit longer. You know?
Didn't work, sadly, for him at all. None of those things happened. But
I think the problem is that goes against the Irish nationalist identity, especially in 1916 when a lot of this stuff was getting rewritten. Because for a very long time, we were having the English narrative of, oh, well, all these people were just savages. They were all stupid people. And then suddenly there's a big switcheroo into the 1920s. And I think it's not until, say, around 1960s, but definitely not until after all the fighting is done in 1998, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, that we're finally starting to somewhat settle down and start to, I wouldn't say we're completely not writing non-biased stuff, as Rachel's pointed out a good few times to myself. And then even when you're looking at stuff written by Gone Medieval and stuff, like sometimes I'm listening to God Medieval from an English perspective and I'm like, it's a little bit biased, but you know, you're talking to somebody who says biased stuff against English all the time. Like everything you said there for a very long time, and I can't help it. And other people have tripped me over like multiple times, like Ghost Hero is probably listening to this now and he's tripped me up a few times on it as well. It's difficult, especially since I was a little child, and like you have to remember, I was a baby when the Troubles was happening, so it still has an impact on my view of the world. It's difficult not to have a very English versus Irish perspective, especially looking back at this, that, you know, it's Desmond Fitzgerald. He's an Irish man who doesn't like the English.
Yeah, I mean, like there was no real idea of a nation state at that time.
Yeah.
Everybody was very much in it for themselves. I mean, to use modern parlance, we could say they were kind of like warlords, especially, in Ireland, each out looking to, I mean, because the English weren't enemy. Do you know what I mean? Like if you are an O'Brien in Clare, you probably hate the Earl of Clanrickard or somebody because he's on your doorstep and he's raided your cattle and you've raided his cattle and he burned your castle and you burned down his castle. The English aren't enemy. Your neighbors, the people around you are people you also hate a lot of the time, and you've got millennia of I effing hate that guy, like and a lot of times they only treated with the English because they wanted the one-upmanship to go, I'm more important than you. The Lord Deputy of the English came here and he treated with me and he's going to get the king to give me some of his clothing and all this sort of shit. I'm than you are, sort of thing. It was a serious game of one-upmanship a lot of the time. And, they signed conditions like, oh, yeah, okay, we'll speak English and we'll wear English clothing within a year. Like, that was never going to happen. And, like, I'll give you so many men towards your army. Because the thing that Henry really wanted was he was in an eternal pissing contest with Francis II of France.
Yeah.
Right? And basically, he wanted to be this Renaissance prince. And it wasn't just about having the best clothes and musicians and being a poet and being well-read. You had to be successful in field of arms. And at one stage in the game, jousting is just not going to cut it. You need to go to war. So you can prove that, God is on your side and you're the best. And basically, Henry, when he was dissolving the monasteries, was basically getting all this money by selling off the monasteries, selling off like the lead from the roof tiles and all this sort of thing. So he could fund war in France. And he needed the Irish, much like you were saying, Rachel. A lot of enemies all around you. He needed at least a good majority of the Irish on side to not be causing trouble in Ireland while he's going to go attack Boulogne in France and try and have basically a dick swinging contest in France. And if he got some Irish kern and Gaelic glass into the bargain, all the better. And that's kind of what happened, basically. Like the Irish who, like, St. Ledger came over in 1540 and started a scorched earth campaign and like kind of came down really hard on the lordships immediately bordering the Pale. And then once that news had kind of spread, then basically like he was like, oh, look, but if you just submit, I won't do that to you. And you're obviously the big kahuna in this neck of the woods sort of thing. And every lordship had rivals. Every lordship had rivals in the clan to be the leader. There was almost constant internecine conflict. So if you're going to one guy and he doesn't want to work with you, well, he's probably got a cousin who also wants to be, the Taoiseach. And you go deal with him, play one off of the other. So it was very much like a massive chessboard, but like instead of however many pieces are on a chessboard, because I don't play chess, you got to figure there's like 1,000 moving parts, well, you always got to keep an eye on France and don't forget Spain. They could be troublesome too. And Ireland's over here, Scotland, of course, they're always united with France and stuff like that. So like there was massive insecurity. And if you could give gifts of your own clothing and buy yourself maybe a couple of years of peace and quiet, well, hey, you've done a wardrobe clear out and it didn't cost you that much. And you bought yourself a little bit of peace and quiet into the bargain, And from the Irish perspective, like I said, going back to that, there was no grand, like, national identity sort of thing. And people were very much like, I need to keep my grip on my lordship, either from my neighbors or my cousin or 3 different cousins. And I got the English to boot, sort of things. So they were all just trying to keep their heads above water, I think.
Yeah, it does sound like it, but it is at the same time very much a shock to the system, especially the way I was raised for years. And I'm actually surprised the comment section actually fully agrees with your yourself, Melissa, I was actually expecting everyone to say, no, it's England versus Ireland, 800 years of British occupation. Instead, the comment section is like, no, we should separate modern history from medieval history. So I'm actually surprised everybody actually fully agrees with yourself, Melissa. I thought there'd be more resistance in the comment section, but no, everyone seems to agree.
Yeah, it's funny, Philip, you brought me into this trajectory on my history and fashion history quest, and I'm coming at this with no bias. I mean, no political bias, right? Because I'm an American mutt. I'm my genetics represent Europe. So all of it. So I don't have any dog in this fight. And so for me coming into this, I specifically have been trying to go where the evidence takes me rather than go take the evidence where I want it to go. So I just haven't been finding all of these nationalist narratives that you've been discussing. Like, I haven't been finding them in the sources I've been reading. It's, it's not about, as I said, and some Sharia laws aren't that cut and dried either. I think Melissa will agree. Yes, there is a classist component, but there's also an economic anxiety that accompanies almost every set of some Sharia laws, because there's also this tendency starting in the late 13th century in France and then moving everywhere else as people get, wealth starts accruing to various people, that people are overspending, and they're overspending on luxury goods that come from abroad. So that means that exactly. So the gold, because this is the era, this is not a fiat currency. Currency is gold and silver and copper, right? These are precious metals, or valuable metals anyway. And so when you're spending money on, I don't know, silk from Florence, and you're living in London, that means that Florence is getting English gold. And so a trade deficit becomes not a hypothetical thing. It becomes a literally tangible thing. So, these some Sharia laws are also involve that kind of anxiety. So it's not, when the some Sharia laws that Edward IV passes in the 1460s, which, by the way, are not just for the Irish. He passes a whole packet of some Sharia laws that govern everything from the length of men's pointy shoes to the, the smocks and the kerchiefs that women that Irish women are wearing. And, my feeling on that regulation about the saffron colored smocks and kerchiefs is not so much about, well, this represents the Irish. Saffron is expensive. It's not easy to come by. You need a lot of it to dye things yellow. So we need to, people are probably spending more on this than they should.
Do we want to flip the screen over for a second? Because I do have a lovely little jar of saffron here.
Oh. There you go. See,
that I could show for about dyeing kerns, Lena, with saffron. Yes, economically, stupidly expensive. I mean, literally worth more than its weight in gold. Even today, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
any bakers out there like to bake with saffron, you'll know that just a few of the little grains will set you back at least a tenner for like 3 grains or something. It's really dear. The economic component is certainly concerning. What I often say in my talks about the Lena and dyeing the Lena with saffron is that basically it also indicates trade, because saffron grows in hot, dry climates like Spain, and Ireland is not a hot, dry climate. It's wet and cold.
What?
And so I know. Like, this was a real slap in the face to the English, because it showed that the Irish were trading, with Spain, and that economic contact would lead to cultural contact, and it would lead to, political dealings, basically, which it absolutely 100% did. Now, I've seen 2 different people experiment, and they showed that they were able to dye Elena in really bright, like get a very bright hue, with 1 ounce of saffron. But I don't know actually how much is in it. But like possibly about that much. I'd need to.
And I was going to say, an ounce of saffron is quite a lot. That is,
It's
yeah,
still not, but
an ounce is 28 grams. So those little bottles are usually about 15 grams, the one that you just showed. So it's almost twice that.
I got this in a market for €5, if you can believe it. Yeah, years and years ago. So it was about this like the basically this trade, this contact that they were very concerned about, as you say, as well as, you know, depleting the thing. But the saffron wasn't necessarily always used in unadulterated form. You could prolong it basically with certain leaves and certain barks. Was it the laurel? Or I don't know. It was Father Matthew Good.
Yeah, there's a couple of different native, actually in Ireland, native weeds that will dye yellow also. So you know, you can cut it with other things.
You could cut, exactly. You could add a bit of saffron to like get that bright burst, but you could also cheat and basically add some other bits and pieces to it to make it stretch.
Yeah.
Happy days. Melissa, how are you for time? Do you have to or you're grand for time tonight? Oh, that's grand. We can keep going so for another hour. Would you be okay for another hour?
I'd say we'll go to 11 because I do have to get up early. We're going to go grocery shopping in the morning. We actually be at Tesco for 8 o'clock when it opens, so we can get parking.
Happy days.
I do want to go to bed at some point in time so I can get up at like 7 o'clock and get ready to go do all the food shopping tomorrow for Christmas.
Nice. No, it's great to have you on my algorithm, because my algorithm right now is buzzing. So happy to have you on. Normally I have.
I mean, Rachel and I haven't talked about what we're wearing at all.
That's true. Actually, it's a valid point.
Please elaborate on that one.
Yeah, my people hear me talk all the time about my stuff. You go, Melissa. Tell us about what you're wearing.
So we said, I mean, going back an hour ago, we said we were going to talk about the clothing of the Earls of Desmond. So I'm going to show you the Gaelic clothing of the Earls of Desmond. Now, I want to just say for a start, first of all, that I well, okay, I'll take this off and then I can officially say that I am, oh no, something's caught, that I'm wearing the clothing of a poor Gaelic woman, because the sources tell us that Gaelic women wore effectively the same garment, the same ensemble, but depending on your status, you either had obviously finer quality fabric, but you would have certain decorations in certain places. So I'm going to show you the clothing of a poor Gaelic woman, like we see in Derrick's wood prints from 1581, I believe. So first of all, my linen layer is my lena. A very long sleeves. It goes down to about my ankles, and you can see all the pleating that's gathered into a neckband all here around the neck. This over that is worn what we call a shinrone gown, but I think I have discovered the name for it in the historical record, what they called it at the time, because it certainly was not called the shinrone gown. Okay. Now, this goes to just under the bust. You could see that's the under bust right there. It does not close entirely in the middle. And we've got lacing going down this kind of U-shaped front that we see here. And of course, then we have the skirt that is a piece of rare artifice, as Luc Guernon said in 1620. It is, let me remember this correctly, I think it's 27 feet, so that's like 9 yards.
Yeah, it's a crazy big hem that gown has. It's insane.
Of fabric. And each of these are cut into panels. So there's, I believe, 23 panels, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I made it. 23 panels. And each of those, so here is one end of a panel, and here is the other end of a panel. So the finished width of the bottom of the panel is about 12 inches or thereabouts. And then there are 3 basically welts sewn into it, and these are done twice, so kind of like what we would call a French seam nowadays, but it's not to, these 3 in the middle are not to hold together, but they are to kind of make this very insulated, very air trapping skirt that will trap the air and warm it up and keep it warm underneath the skirt. So it's massively huge. And yes, I did do it by hand. So I could tell you it takes ages. And then another defining feature of this is these hanging sleeves that the English were so fond of criticizing. And what they said was the only reason they could figure out why, you know, that they could scratch their heads and go, why do the Irish love these hanging sleeves? And of course, they said from their point of view that it was so lest they wear out their elbows, basically saying the Irish are big drunkards. Now, these, it's stated, were usually tied around the wrist, but in looking at documentation, I can't really see any ties. So I think they also could have been pinned around the wrist to the sleeve of the lena. That was a very common fastening technique in the period all over Europe. So it wouldn't have been at all unusual for a woman to pin that. Now, if you're a wealthy woman, again, this wool might be a finer wool. And we know, again, from Luke Gernon's description, that he said in 1620 that they wore sets of really round, flat silver buttons on the forepart, which means the bodice, basically right here. But the image that we have of the period from about 40 years earlier actually shows the young lady, and you could see round dots, round circles on her sleeve. So those are probably the silver buttons there. So possibly in 40 years, the fashion switched from decorating the sleeves to decorating the forepart.
Yes. Yeah, so someone actually asked me about those silver, the circles. And I said, they asked me if they were embroidered. And I said, I think they're more likely metal, what we would call bezants in the 14th century.
He basically said that they were worth up to 40 shillings, which is £2, and they said sometimes they could even be up to worth £5. And going on the historian John Guy, who is like the word in kind of 16th century economic history, like he estimates that we can safely say that a pound at the time would be worth about £1,000 in today's money. So you reckon if you had 40 shillings, like I said, is £2. If you had £4,000 worth of bling basically hanging out here, on your gown, that would be for the noble women. That would be for the noble Gaelic women. And even the description of that picture I showed you, it says she's a young noble woman. Now, because she's young, she's not wearing the hairstyle that I'm wearing. So this is not necessarily the hairstyle of a married woman, but the headwear style of a woman who has had a child. So again, in documents we see from the 16th century. So I've got my hair plaited, 2 plaits crisscrossed atop my head, and the descriptions and also the pictures, the pictorial evidence show us like essentially a little veil of sort. Now this is silk, but if you were poor, it would be of linen. Then I've got the enormous cheese roll that you see in the period, and it's talked about. They even called it a cheese roll. It looks like basically a cheese roll or a mold. And this is 6 meters of linen that I've pleated and folded and pleated and folded, and then I stitched into place so that I can quickly put it on for a show. And that goes over the head like so. And now then we see a hat, a flat kind of hat on top of that. So this was actually knitted by Ryan Koenig, who was doing his master's on a hat found in Kerry during an excavation. So I had him knit me one. So that completes that. So if I was poor, the descriptions of the time, and even like Derek's plate, shows that a poor woman would take like a white linen kerchief. She would place this around her neck and tuck the ends into the top of the bodice. This provides obviously a bit more warmth, a bit more modesty, because of course there is no bras at this time. And because it is going from the underbust, it doesn't necessarily lift up the real estate that you have. So a poor woman would wear it thus, and a wealthy woman, it was said, would basically have, or the better sort, not necessarily wealthy, but the better sort, to use the language of the time, would have a silk scarf basically around her neck, and that would be tucked into that U-front bodice. And then it said it's also pinned into place. And we also see from the images that women wore a girdle, which is like a belt around the waist, and then from that would be suspended a pouch very near the ankles that would have any, money, neck handkerchiefs, letters, whatever she's carrying around town. So this basically would be the attire of both of Gaelic women, both poor and rich, and as the accessories would change. So Jim is saying, are you saying that you could tell by the way a woman was dressed whether she was married and had children or not? Well, you could tell whether she had children or not, because if she was Gaelic, she would wear this style of headdress. Because in the Sparky Booker talks about it in an article of hers. She says that it was prohibited at one stage. I think I even read this in the it's not called the Statute Book of Irish Town in Kilkenny, but it's not far off of that title. And it said that it was forbidden that basically when a woman was brought to bed of a child, that she wasn't allowed to have her gossips come in and feast with her and then basically put on her headroll. So it looks like the Gaelic Irish didn't care so much about signifying whether you were married or not, but once you had a child, this was then the headroll that was adopted, or the headwear. And then of course we have ubiquitous, and I wove this many years ago for my husband. But I'm delighted to be able to wear it. So this is the shaggy mantle. It is a very rough wool, but I've put fringe all the way down the two edges, and I wove in this unspun raw wool into the warp when I was weaving it. So every five rows, I would lay down basically a row of this unspun fleece, and it is pretty warm, which is good. It's cold out here, so.
And you can see in the imagery of the time from the 16th century, especially, they actually often provide the details of the shag, right? You can actually see all those little wisps of wool just kind of curling off of it. Yeah,
because it was just so iconic. It was so absolutely iconic. They were saying, is there a question? Is there a hairstyle of maiden women? Well, looking at this image,
you talking about that one? Give us a second there, because are you talking about the same one again? Is it?
Pull it up there. Let's see.
This one here, is it? This one, or is it the other one?
The other one.
Give us a second. I'll pop over. I'll let you get the main one while I go through.
Yeah, you had a 50-50 chance.
Yeah. It's like gambling away. Well, wrong one.
So actually, while he's looking for that picture, so what's fascinating about that headdress is that you've seen, of course, the altarpieces depicting Mary Magdalene in the 15th century, and she's wearing a headdress that's almost exactly like that, right? Of course, go on.
Sorry, that's the image of the unmarried or the young girl. Basically, that's a woman who hasn't had a child. She's a young girl. What's interesting about her gown is that it seems to be lined in a different color and doesn't have all the pleats. But you can see her hair is bound, and then she's got like a circlet basically on top of the head, but she's not covering it with veils or the cheese roll or anything like that. So 1575, sorry.
So I was just commenting, the cheese roll headdress that you're wearing is depicted, that exact style is depicted on Mary Magdalene, in several Mary Magdalene depictions, which came out of model books, right? So that wasn't a fashion that women on mainland Europe were wearing. It was just what they depicted Mary Magdalene wearing. But what I'm wondering is, so a lot of the exotic headdresses that you see in 15th century Europe, in these paintings were not headdresses worn by Christian women, but they were headdresses that were being worn by the Romani, who were coming flooding into Europe at that time, sort of in advance of the Ottoman March. And so the artists started depicting women who were from the East in biblical scenes in these Romani headdresses, because their idea was, well, this is obviously what people in Egypt wear. So yeah, so they actually called the Romani Egypts. That's actually where the word gypsy comes from the medieval word for Egypt, right? And so they started looking at the headdresses these newly arrived Eastern immigrants were wearing, and they said, well, that's right. That's our new look for what is exotic and Eastern. So we'll just put all our biblical women in those. So it wasn't it wasn't a fashion that Christian women were wearing. And I'm wondering about why Mary Magdalene. No one has actually been able to come up with a satisfactory explanation that I've read. Now that I'm really seeing, and I noticed that connection, but it's like, but that's the 15th century and the continent, and the cheese roll that you're demonstrating is, 16th century Ireland. So I'm wondering if it's just a coincidence or if not. Have you read about any connections between those Marys Magdalene and that cheese roll headdress?
I actually haven't. No. No, that's a very new take to me. That's very interesting. Would be definitely an interesting avenue for research, to see if that connection could be teased out.
Another rabbit hole. Thank God. Just what I need.
Another rabbit hole. Exactly. Damn rabbits.
Stupid rabbits.
Making rabbit holes everywhere.
Right.
Oh,
there
goodness.
was one off Susan there as well. She was asking, how did you pleat the donut hole headdress? She's just asking there.
Oh, so I actually I only had 2 meters of linen. So I cut it into thirds, and then I stitched them end to end to make 6 meters, and pressed the seams open with a glass slick, because I was actually doing a Viking reenactment event in Waterford.
Wait, I have one. I have a glass slick. Philip, put me on. This is a.
Oh, good woman. Mine's in the house.
I have one right here.
Yeah, exactly. And they are marvelous. I swear to God, if you ever have to iron something and it's really hot and you don't want to plug in the iron, grab a glass slick, because it will do a magnificent job, and it won't add to the heat. I've done that before in summer. I'm like, oh, it's too hot. I'm just going to iron it with a slick. So I basically pressed the seams open, and then it was kind of trial and error. I can't even remember now. It's like 2 years ago, but I folded it a bunch of different ways. And then I think, hold on. Yeah, I didn't want any raw edges showing. So basically, when I folded it, I made sure to fold the raw edges in, and then kind of worked the seams. It created a seam, or pressed the seam, or with the slick, and then I kind of folded it in again and did the same, all along 6 meters, until basically it was this thickness, which is you bastard. It is 2 3/4 inches thick, or tall, shall we say, which I don't know what that is in centimeters, because I operate in old money. So it's whatever that is in centimeters, if that's what you use.
That's roughly 7 centimeters. 6. Yeah.
So I just experimented until I found a thickness that I thought looked right on my head, and constantly comparing it to other images at the time to see, does that look about right? Does it look, I wanted it to kind of cover a bit of the forehead, but not all of it. And I wanted my head to poke through a bit of the top of it. And then basically, once I got it to the thickness that I liked, I just took a linen thread and I basically whipped all around the bottom so that it would kind of stay in place, so that I wouldn't have to be folding this. Because when I do a talk or when I do a show, sometimes I have to change clothing very quickly. And I didn't want to have to be messing around winding 6 meters around my head when I'm doing a talk, or having it fall down over my face while I'm talking. And they probably did as well. But if they wanted to wash it, they would have thought nothing in the world of unpicking that linen thread, holding it together and like washing it and then restitching it. Like we don't have much practice in continual alterations of our clothing, but they certainly
did.
So
yeah, I'm always telling people ask about my sleeves and they ask, well, aren't those tied on with ribbons? And I'm like, no, they are not. They are sewn in. And if I want to wear a different pair of sleeves, then I unpick the stitches and I sew in a different pair of sleeves. And if I'm right, and if I'm a well-heeled lady, I have a maid for that. Right. So I get up in the morning and I stretch and I'm like, oh, bring me that Gamora. Oh, but I don't want those sleeves. Please fetch me the silk, the black velvet sleeves with the gold embroidery. And then they, without me having to say it, the maids would just automatically unpitch the stitches and redo it. And it's we rush. We live in such a hurry in the modern world that we can't imagine. It's hard for us to imagine a world in which you have more than 5 minutes to get dressed. Like that's
exactly.
That's hard for people to imagine.
Ask me all the time, how long does it take you to put that on if I'm wearing, Regency or Georgian or Elizabethan or whatever? And I'm like, 15, 20 minutes. And that's including lacing myself into stays or a kirtle or a corset or whatever the period demands. And they're like, flabbergasted. And like, honestly, the thing that takes me the longest is my hair, because I'm not very good at doing my hair. So that's what takes me the longest. But getting into clothing is not the problem. And like, what I like to, they're like, but how did you lace yourself into the corset? I'm like, I have a lot of mobility. I'm very flexible. And you use an extremely long lace, like 5 meters.
Yeah.
You keep it permanently laced. You just pull it on over your head and then you can tighten. And because I can reach up my back, I can tighten, I can go down the ladder, I call it, to tighten my laces and get into it. And I always say, like, you don't have to do it perfectly the first time. You go, if it's not tight enough, you go back up and you retighten and you lace down tighter. And I say, but obviously wealthy women did have servants and ladies' maids, because kind of the whole point of being rich is that you pay other people to do stuff you could easily do for yourself. But don't want to.
100%. When I have some of my damsels with me and I actually can do a proper getting dressed with assistance, it's such a more enjoyable experience than when I'm dressing myself.
Yeah. Oh, it's very relaxing. If you have somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yes.
Somebody who's not afraid to lace too tightly, because then you're like, no, you actually do need to lace tighter. The gown won't fit if the kirtle isn't, tight enough to where it actually supports the weight of the gown and pulls my shoulders back so I have the proper posture. It is a dream if somebody knows what they're doing. And if not, that's why I gave up. I used to go in and basically try to like find people. If I was giving a talk in a museum, find a lady in the toilet and try to talk her through how to lace me. And the whole time, she'd be like, oh, is this too tight? And like, eventually I was like, no, I'm getting myself some 5 meter laces, and I'm permanently lacing this thing and pulling it on my head and just tightening, and I'll do it myself and I'll get done much quicker. And I find the only thing that you really need help with is little fiddly bits. Like if I'm wearing my pertlet for my courtier's gown and I just can't push it down basically the back of my neck for it to sit properly below the gown. Like that's the stupid stuff that I need help with, like not the lace.
Partlets are remarkably fiddly. It's, you're like, this shouldn't be this hard. It's not even a meter of fabric. Why is it this hard? Yeah, it's
exactly.
Yeah,
this little scrap, diaphanous scrap of silk is just giving me so many problems,
Did we cover this question earlier? You probably did there. The hat style on the right, popping over to this photo now. The hat style on the right is different to the flat cap. Is that regional, or do we know anything about the construction? Did we cover that earlier? I'm sure we...
So do you mean the hat style of the woman, like with the tall hat? You don't mean the young girl with the circlet?
We'll wait for a response of that one.
And the hat style is on the left.
And then she kind of expanded on that. People who don't pull the corset tight enough or don't understand its likes, a shoelace or a bane of my existence.
Yeah,
just commenting on that one. Oopsies.
Yeah, so the hat style on the left, that's worn by what's said a townswoman.
Mm.
So we can comfortably assume that would be like an Anglo-Irish woman of the Pale. Oh yeah, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so that's possibly made of like felt or even beaver was a common hat material. It's an unusual one. I've never seen a good replica of it. It'd be interesting to try to recreate. Because again, she's got a little bit of the cheese roll, but not as pronounced. Like, and that looks more like it's twisted rather than pleated, I would say.
Yeah, that looks more like turbaning to me, like a light version of turbaning. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would say there's still some sort of veil underneath, like a little short one ending just at the chin, and then maybe like a linen like twist or very, very demure turban, and then like that black felt or wool hat with a very interesting shape.
Is she supposed to be a noblewoman? Do we have is that what the description?
No, she's meant to be a townswoman.
Townswoman. Okay. Either way, so that could be velvet. Like those cuffs, those turn back cuffs, they the way they're painted, they have a very sort of deep
giving velvet,
velvety look. The cap also.
Now if she's the wife of a rich merchant, then totally believable that would be velvet. Yeah. You wouldn't need much velvet to make that.
Yeah.
Like half of well, maybe a yard, because the velvet at that time was like only 18 inches wide.
Right.
So,
true.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe 3/4 of a yard.
I honestly, I could probably take one length of linen and create that whole look. So you wouldn't even need a separate veil. You would just wrap it around your head and then tuck the ends in, and then it would just frame your face in that charming manner.
Actually, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Because that's the exact same, like the lines are the same, the color is the same of the little dog ear bits, the hanging dog ear bits. So yeah, I don't know. I've never attempted it. It's like on an eventual project someday to make the townswoman gown. But at this stage, I tell you, wool is nearly more expensive than silk. Like,
it is.
Get silk.
Oh, it is. She's right. 100%. Yep.
In January, so my friend went to Australia and then she had a 13-hour layover in LA on her way back, and she was going to go to the fabric district. So she was going to get a taxi from the airport to the fabric district. And meanwhile, here I was in Ireland. We had 3 days of no power because we had a snowstorm, which is extremely rare for us. And I was laying in bed, frozen cold and feeling very sorry for myself. Of course, we also had no internet. So eventually, like, my phone reception is appalling, right? And I can only sporadically get messages through, and miraculously the wind blew in the right direction, and her messages while she was in LA got to me like actually at the time she sent them. So she sent me a picture from one of the shops in the LA fashion district, like this wall of silk, and she said, look at this, it's $10 a yard. I'm like, oh my god, I want the fourth from the bottom. Get me 4 yards of that. I'm so miserable. I'm so sad. I need something to cheer me up. I need something to look forward to, because I've had no internet, no heat, nothing for 3 days. And she got me several yards of the silk for $10 a yard. Jesus. And I made a late 1790s open robe out of it. And like, I have recently bought from Burley and Trowbridge in the States, normally $40 a yard. I bought some super fine broadcloth, but it was reduced to 20 on sale to make a Regency riding habit. And it's like, that wool was twice as expensive on sale as the silk was.
Yep.
You know, so it's just wild, the price of
well, I mean,
fabric.
And some of that difference is where the wool is being woven. You know, the wool is not being woven generally in China and India the way the silk is. The wool the wool is being woven in Europe or the United States often. So yeah, there's
hopefully better labor practices. Better pay.
Hopefully, we'll see.
Not a guarantee, but hopefully.
Caveman just has a question there. He says, did they use sealskin at all during the 16th century in Ireland? Did they use sealskin at all during the 16th century Ireland?
I've never come across it, but that doesn't mean that they didn't. I believe I've seen it in like prehistoric, probably archaeology and things like that. Maybe on the coastal areas, like say Galway or Clare, Mayo, if there's seals there, possibly they used it for something. But do you mean for clothing, for shoes, for like hides for boats, you know, like the curras or whatever? Like, I haven't seen it in clothing. I'll just say that. But also, I haven't seen absolutely everything that there is, you know, so don't discount it. That's an area for future research. Maybe archaeologists more so than historians, because I'm not seeing it in the historical record. So yes, sometimes you can buy wool blankets in the charity shop and dye them. That is true. Not in abundance though. Like there has to be wool blankets for people to have had and get rid of. And
So-
I just not here in Ireland.
Yeah, like-
anyway. I'm sure in the States
Like
probably not here.
30 years ago, you could get wool blankets for a song at every charity shop, right? But now, just like cast iron pans, now everyone knows that wool blankets are far superior to synthetic ones, and everyone knows that cast iron pans are far superior to Teflon. So now suddenly they have value. So good luck finding them in charity shops these days.
Like back when I started reenacting in 2002, I got a sheet of linen in a St. Vincent de Paul in Wexford town for €2. Do you know? So like 100% linen sheet for €2. So yeah, and like, but I haven't found anything good in a charity shop in ages. So yeah, there is a traditional sealskin shoes on R9s. I thought as much. Campfire speaker. But whether that's how far back that goes, because I mean, tradition could be 18th century, or it could be,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So we would need an archaeologist with more knowledge than I have myself to tell us like how old they've been able to date sealskin shoes on the Aran Islands, to see how long that's been used, if it was present in the 16th century. So I don't know.
Yeah, I always tell people people always assume that traditional equals historical. And I said, no, tradition means someone did it twice. That's a tradition, right?
Very
So traditional.
I mean, and like we've said already, like the 18th century is not the 16th century. It's not the 14th century, you know. Some things that we think are very old, but that's a relative term, you know. So it doesn't mean it's been done from time immemorial. I feel those sealskin shoes probably would be a very old practice. They sound
absolutely
incredibly useful, especially in a place like the Aran Islands, which is not the mainland. And we also have to remember geography when we're talking about practices, because what was done in the Aran Islands may not have been done on the mainland at all, you know. So but I mean, I feel like if you're slaughtering a seal to eat and use the oil and the fat and all of that sort of thing, you're not going to let the skin go to waste.
No, for certain.
That's going to be a good shoe material right there.
Yeah, the question is, it would be used. The question is for what, right? There's absolutely no chance they were wasting the skin unless there was some kind of religious reason to do so. You know, some kind of prohibition. But yeah, I think I always like to say, because you never know, evidence might come forward. The way I like to answer questions like that is, I haven't seen evidence of it.
Exactly. But I also admit I haven't looked. Like that's
right. Exactly.
Research.
Exactly.
Probably because I don't want to wear sealskin shoes. So I haven't, I don't want to go through that process. You know, so it's not been something I've been even looked at, because I do not want to attempt that in any way, shape or form. For Irish lords closer to the Pale, would they wear Gaelic clothing most of the time and pull out English clothes specifically for dealing with the English, or was there something in between? Well, it seems to suggest from various sources that they possibly did, that they basically would wear English style clothing when dealing with like the Lord Deputy or the agents from Dublin Castle, and wore Gaelic clothing probably most of the rest of the time. But those are again filtered through English writers. So if they weren't in the lordship, how would they know what the Irish did when they weren't there, you know? So
right. And are there, so, you're talking about these English sources. What are the Irish sources talking about their own, like, are there Irish sources talking about their own clothing in their own time, or is it pretty much all these foreigners drawing and writing about what's happening in Ireland?
It's mostly the foreigners, but we do have some mentions of Irish clothing in poetry. So we've got the poet Lisa MacBaird. He was writing in the 16th century, probably the 1540s, it's estimated. And he was talking about like a young nobleman's son who did not basically follow foreign fashions and reject, the traditional clothing. So again, that's in my thesis. I can find you a direct quote if you like. Oh, go away, will you?
I love how the Irish don't directly say it. We can't tell you directly, but we can sing it to you. Do you know?
We'll sing it to you.
yeah, exactly. It's so Irish-like. Do you know? I can't find anyone saying it directly, but I can find someone singing it to them. Do you know?
Yeah. So you do have poets who are praising people who don't give up traditional fashions to follow English fashions, who aren't like lured by gifts of clothing from the English, basically. So, I mean, make of that what you will. There's a lot there to unpack and to process.
Right.
As regards why, like, for instance, we know that the English thought the Irish clothing, like the half sleeves, were strange. They thought the head roll was strange. They really were perturbed by the use of saffron. We don't know why the Irish loved saffron, but when I was doing my research, I looked at these particular collections of poems, and I did a search, and I found that one of the most frequent adjectives used in every single line of these poems was the word bright.
Right.
English. And the Irish just really seemed to love the quality of brightness, whether that was discussing the bright ramparts upon which somebody stood, or the bright, I mean, literally anything you could think of that they talked about. They used one of the many adjectives they used in a string of adjectives was always bright. So I personally have theorized, and I mean, I'm open to other academic viewpoints that are backed up with citation. I theorize that the Irish just really loved the quality of brightness as attested in their poetry. And Elena, fluorescent orange, traffic cone hazmat jacket Lena it's certainly bright, I won't say that it hides the dirt better than white would. I mean, it could be argued that white is also equally bright, but I think that really stands out, and it really shows out, especially in a very dull landscape, a very gray, if it's very cloudy and gray,
yeah, I think that was what I was going to say. Ireland's pretty dark, and it's not the brightest place on its own. So I would say that decorating your world in a way that would cheer you up, that would bring you cheer, that would lift your spirits, would be very popular. So I can absolutely see the need to make your world as sunny as possible with the tools you have to do so.
Absolutely. What's interesting is we've got legislation that says that, if a woman is wearing a saffron Lena, she's to be fined every time she wears it. And yet in all of the pictorial depictions, all of the leintha that the women are wearing, at least, are white.
Yeah.
So, and I did not dye mine that I'm wearing because I actually hate the color. I don't like orange and yellows. I actually hate it. So I'm a purple girl, and I will everything purple all the time. So I'm just gonna leave it white because at least I've got a visual depictions of white leintha, so that I don't have to wear that color next to my skin.
Yeah, and I think it's key to remember that just because some people did doesn't mean that everyone did, right?
Exactly.
That it's expensive. Two, that's the layer that gets laundered, so the color isn't going to last. It's not going to stay bright for very long.
Yeah.
And so you're not everyone.
We do have critics saying that like say Kern would get a new Lena at either Christmas or Easter, and they'd wear it the whole year and never wash it once. So I suppose if you don't wash it, the color won't die. But again, that's probably very heavily propagandized. So,
yeah, I was going to say, has anyone tried to do that? I want someone to do that living history experiment and get back to me.
Good God.
I don't care how antibacterial you all think linen and saffron as a dye stuff are.
Oh, Sweaty. If you're sweating, that it just stinks. Like it just
and the oils from your skin will make it so stiff. Stiff. Oh, yuck.
Thankfully, I've never worn the same linen shift long enough to have discovered that. I have discovered over the years of reenacting, yes, it's lovely to have fine gowns, but Lord have mercy, if you're doing a several day event, you want underwear, you want changes of underwear. You better have at least 2 or 3 shifts, chemises, shirts, whatever you want, that one can be in the laundry tub and one could be worn, and you can have a backup in case you spill anything or something like that. It is paramount to have enough underwear.
I do a 2-week medieval camping event every year where I live 15th century, luxury 15th century, mind you, but still. About, and I do have enough clothes to get me through it, but halfway through there's a laundry day where we actually have the buckets and we just put all the linens in the bucket and we just scrub the hell out of them, and we use fermented urine to get them white again. And but
actually great
stuff.
But
after just wearing this, and I do wear my smocks multiple times. So even wearing this just 3 times. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, do I have to put it on a 4th time? Because it's just like the oil, the grease from my skin here, the combined with the dirt and the soot from the fire smoke, right? It just makes it grossly stiff.
So unpleasant. Yeah, I used to do events in Kentwell in England. So we lived
Kentwell. Yeah.
For 2 weeks. And I only had, I think I made 2 shifts, but fortunately, one of my friends was going home every night. She lived very nearby and she had a washing machine and a tumble dryer. So we'd get fresh linen shifts the next day. And actually, if they weren't perfectly dry, that was okay. Because in the really hot weather, it was kind of nice to put on a slightly damp shift. And it kept you so... It started off the day quite nicely. Now, eventually you'd be perspiring no matter what, because it was like 30 degrees and you're wearing 5 layers and everything is lined and interlined, so it's more like 17 layers of fabric by the time you're done. It was actually quite nice. And we used to have this little trick. We had rose water that we keep chilled, and we'd actually tip a bit of it down our cleavage.
Chilled rose water.
Rose water. It was a little pick-me-up when it was really hot.
little bucket, like the wine coolers they had in the 16th century, but you all used rose water. Fantastic. I love that idea. That's fantastic.
It was delightful, absolutely delightful. What we do now, like when I go to the Jane Austen Festival, which I just did 10 days in September at Jane Austen Fest, and of course your stays, I mean, the linen, the cotton, it doesn't absorb everything. Like some sweat still does get through when it's just beastly hot. And we basically got the cheap ass vodka and a spray bottle and sprayed the stays every night to kill the bacteria so that we wouldn't smell until eventually the festival was over and we could like hand wash our stays. So
that is people might not know that technique, the vodka or spirits technique, but it's a good one. It works really well to take the body smells anyway out of your garments, because it kills the bacteria.
Kills the bacteria, and you can stand yourself, basically. You can stand.
That's right.
If you can't smell yourself, there's nothing worse than being able to smell yourself. And you're like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever.
Just heading back over to the questions there. I swear I'm not ignoring you guys. I'm just kind of showing the comments that are kind of agreeing into the topic and kind of slightly ignoring for the time being, and now bringing them back up again, the questions. One question there for you, I'm probably even pushing over to Rachel there in a second, but I'll ask it to Melissa first. I wonder if talking about the clothing, I wonder if clothing influences let me reword this, because it was kind of, she typed it as you were just saying this as well, but the original one was, I wonder if it had anything to do with Saint Bridget, the goddess of wheat, etc., etc. Basically, to put this back into English again, because she was kind of saying this while you were talking, is there any religious influences into 16th century clothing? In particular, is there any influence from Saint Bridget into the clothing? Is there any religious influences into the clothing?
I can't say that I found any reference explicitly where they say, do you mean the color yellow, is it?
Yeah, we're talking about
Saffron?
yellow.
I can't say that I found any primary sources from dating from the 16th century where they say, we love this color because it's associated with St. Bridget. But I'll have to admit that, like, religious, like my area of research is gift exchange, political gift exchange. I've not seen that, but that's not to say it's not there. There might be other academics out there who could answer that question better. I think a lot of times associate colors, our color associations are very Victorian. Like now, green is associated with Ireland, but for the longest time, even up until the 19th century, blue, St. Patrick's blue, was the color of Ireland, was like the symbolic color of Ireland. So like a lot of things that we have inherited from the Victorians were kind of makey uppy stuff that they came up with on the spot for purposes. So that's not to say that it's not associated with it and that it's like possibly a very old association. I've just never seen it. That's the safe answer.
It's very interesting. It's all of the religious discussion I've seen in primary sources about clothing has to do with what bothers the preachers, what is irritating the preachers today, right? So it's not so much in my experience, at least what I've seen, even for Ireland, it's more about what people shouldn't be doing, but definitely are doing, that violates the sense of morality or modesty, and rather than, well, we're wearing the colors of, in Florence, it would be St. Francis or St. Clair, so I haven't seen that kind of association either, colors with a specific saint or something like that.
I'll just cover two more questions then, and we have to start wrapping it up because poor Melissa has to get up early. She's up late now.
She's got to go fight the grocery store crowds for Christmas foods.
Two of them are to do.
But anyway,
two of them I reckon would have to do with back over to living history side of things as well. The first question is: I heard the saffron itself helped the linen last longer, and the second one is: I take it you can't throw those dressers into the washer or dryer.
No, you cannot.
No, indeed. When I give my talks, I like to also talk about cleaning methods. So I like to say that, the linen layer, the body layer, that's what was thrown into the washing tub and scrubbed to within an inch of its life. Yep. I have heard, and I can't remember where, maybe Rachel, you've heard this, the linen is the only fiber that's actually stronger when wet than it is when dry.
It is. So all cellulose, actually, cellulose fibers, so hemp, ramie, and linen, they all get stronger when they're fully hydrated. So that's why I always tell people, when you're taking care of your linens, when you're washing your linens, let them soak for several hours before you start agitating them, because they get stronger and you'll actually have a lot less wear and tear. They'll last longer. So that is actually true. By contrast, protein fibers like silk do badly. They get weaker. Hair too gets weaker when you get it wet. So
So you can wash wool. You have to do it extremely carefully, so you're not creating felt. But also you remember, in a world before electricity and tumble dryers, you need several hot sunny days together to get that soft dry. Because I've worn my 1780s wool redingote out, and I got a little bit dirty, and I washed it, and then but I had to make sure I had like several days of like 26, 27 degree weather, full sun for that to get fully dry. It takes a bloody age to dry. Linen, on the other hand, actually dries quite quickly. It evaporates. That's the whole point of linen, is that it evaporates that liquid away quite quickly. Silk, you don't ever really want to wash because it gets watermarked. So basically that's why you have layers underneath it, and you would wear very fancy napkins. So the napkin practices in the 16th century had a very long napery that was woven in Italy, as it happens. And basically you would throw it over your left shoulder and it would cover your entire bodice and go down into your lap, what I like to call the drop zone. So that you would really try to keep things very clean. And also quite a lot of the accessories that we see, like the ruff, the partlet, the big fancy cuffs. If we do this again, I'll wear court clothing the next time. They were basically all pinned into place. So you could scrub the linen shift that could really take the beating in the washing tub, but you could delicately wash the rough cuffs that were here, that were made out of the much finer linen, like very fine linen, or covered in lace, or even Venice lace, which was essentially gold. So you didn't really wash the dresses. If mud and food are going to be basically your biggest dirtying factors, mud, just like you do today, you let it dry and then you brush it off, so which is dry cleaning. You might dampen it with a wet cloth afterwards to take off any more, but like very well wrung out cloth to, lift off any more surface dirt. There are German laundry books, I believe, from the 15th century that have a whole list of different techniques for, again, dry cleaning. So obviously if you got candle wax on some fabric, well, you're going to basically iron that out, much like we would do today. If you got, they said, grease on velvet, you should take dry, old, stale bread and crumb it and roll it into the velvet, to the pile of the velvet, to soak up the grease. So, hopefully don't get it dirty. And if you do, there's techniques. And if it's really bad, you're cutting that sucker up and you are using it to make something else. Or if you possibly, your tailor still had the cabbage, which was the leftover pieces from cutting, they absolutely would replace a piece. And if it was really badly dirtied, they would replace a piece and try to hide it that way. I mean, you're trying to make this clothing last as long as possible,
Yeah, I think also we forget that we in the modern world are so spoiled with our washing machines and our dryers and our synthetic garments that can take any kind of damage we do to them, that we're not as careful as people were. We have these etiquette books from the 15th and 16th century in English that talk at length about how to eat at the table so that you don't get food on your clothes. So yes, there are all these stain treatments. Those 15th century laundry manuals are super handy. But from the mindset was, I will act in a way that will not get my clothes dirty. Right.
Exactly.
That's kind of step one.
Exactly. I mean, we also see in the 16th century, so if women are horse riding, they are wearing something called the foot cloth, which is essentially like a big bag that goes around kind of the bottom of their gowns. Now, it's also made out of velvet and, cloth of gold and stuff like that, but that's specifically to get dirty. And so that's protecting the bottom of their gowns, let's say from the knee down, their shoes, all that sort of thing. So there are ways. And of course, the whole part of being a noble is to, have this elegance, this the sprezzatura.
Sprezzatura, Castiglione's term. Love it. Fantastic.
Exactly. It's so good. It's so good. This effortless grace, this effortless classiness. And so being clean is definitely part of that, staying clean. When the peasant is out laboring, not only does his body get dirty, but his clothes get dirty, and you're able to avoid. All I can think of is the Spanish word ensuciarlo. You're able to avoid yourself.
Yeah, you won't get dirty. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. What was the other question? That was a two-parter.
Yeah.
The
What
one was the Lena. The Lena lasts longer.
Oh, the
with
saffron.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I haven't seen evidence that saffron significantly protracts the life cycle of linen. I haven't seen any kind of scientific evidence studies done on that or any kind of analysis. Have you,
Yeah.
Melissa?
I've seen people in the 16th century who said that it did, but as far as, like you say, modern science, I don't know if that's actually true or not. So that would be an interesting project.
Yeah.
And
Probably
so the same person who also doesn't bathe for a year, doesn't wash their shirt for a year, should get back to us with some analysis versus, of course, then we're going to have someone be the control. So someone will have to therefore wear a white linen shirt for a year.
Yeah. Oh my
And
God.
then we can compare the wear, tear, and bacterial growth. God.
Oh Lord. That doesn't bear thinking about. They'd want to have lost their sense of smell entirely.
They would have. By the end of that, their brain just wouldn't register it anymore.
Yeah. Like, no, I think you can cope. So
what is
you could only
horrible
do
about
that
this
if you
segment,
had
people like that.
anosmia, basically, and never had to go into public.
Right.
When I was in the military, every once in a while we'd come across somebody who just did not clean themselves. And the punishment, Rachel probably knows this punishment as well if you don't clean yourself in the military, where the other men will get you and they'll drag you into the shower and they'll literally scrub you.
Scrub you. Yes.
And it's every once in a while. I think every 100, so it's 300 men per battalion. So it's like 1 out of every 300 men we'd come across do not clean themselves. They don't clean themselves. And the punishment is, yes, Rachel, you've definitely come across this. Where
Yes, I have.
They're brought into the shower and physically scrubbed. And it's not nice. It's painful.
No.
Why would you do this to yourself, you know? And it's not like the lads are nice.
I mean, well, here's the thing. If you haven't showered or bathed or washed your body in any way for a long enough time, you need to be scrubbed like hard because you're, oh God. Wow.
That is just like permeating several levels of skin layers. Age, like, yeah, I bet there are some teenage boys who do that.
100%, like, no, I shower at least.
Whether their families would want them to live in the same house is
stop. Some poor mother having to deal with that. And there is out there. Okay, so sadly, I do have to wrap it up, which is quite depressing because all the Americans quickly jumped on. We were literally saying goodnight to all the Irish, and we have to sadly say goodnight to Melissa as well because you're over in Ireland, which is a pity because all the Americans are now jumping on. Because I seen I don't know if Rachel had seen it as well. I seen the sudden dip of the numbers and then it jumping back up again
as the Americans get available to join in.
Yeah, and it doesn't hit its peak until another 2 hours, so we'd have to drag them up for another 4 hours.
6 o'clock in the US on the East Coast. So
that does make sense actually. But anyway, I'll have to say goodnight to Melissa. Thank you so much, Melissa, for coming on today. I feel like the only reason you came on is because we have a very good positive relationship. Thank you, Yuki.
Yeah.
But if it was anyone else, you'd probably tell them to feck off. Yeah, pretty much.
We could do this again if you want. I can wear Elizabethan courtly attire, and I could do much like Rachel. I could start out partially attired and put it all on and show how it all goes together, basically. So, although I feel like people know that more, so maybe that's not as interesting as Gaelic attire. So.
I would say that Philip's audience anyway, people are less likely to know that.
Okay, fair enough.
For Philip's audience, that would probably be pretty novel. For my audience, there would be a combination of, oh yeah, that's how I get dressed, and combined with, wow, this is cool. I've never seen this before. So I'd have more of a mix than Philip would probably, but it's still interesting. And also, if you do that as you talk, you can just drop little knowledge bombs, right? That people probably might not have heard, even if they get dressed that way. So
Exactly. I mean, there's always new stuff to learn. there's always stuff people have come up with. There's always new stuff in academia to spread, basically. So yeah. Right, guys, I am getting tired. I was doing fine until
Melissa, it was so lovely to meet you. This was so much fun. I really hope we get to have this little three-way again, and I'm just going to drop that out there.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Hopefully.
Sounds great.
For the rest of the week, tomorrow's when I have you guys again. We're over on Patreon tomorrow, where I'm going to cover the topic, William Marshall and Isabel de Clare in Ireland. So if you're in that kind of stuff, definitely head over to my Patreon. It's only 20 quid a month, and we cover a topic every Sunday night, okay? That's 9 o'clock Irish time. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, definitely head over to my Patreon, Irish Medieval History, where we're going to be covering the topic William Marshall and Isabel de Clare in Ireland. Huge, massive topic. And on top of that as well, we're back again on the 23rd, where myself and Rachel will be covering Melissa's favorite topic, Braveheart, and all the historical inaccuracies, which actually... We should actually have Melissa on that as well, because you know a ton of people that worked on that one. I don't know did Sean Shields work in
my husband.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. We should have bloody had Sean on for that one.
Ireland was in that.
Oh my God.
We do need to get Sean. I was saying that to Rachel as well. We do need to get Sean. I have to actually say that to Sean as well, to try to get Sean on as well, because the amount of knowledge Sean would know, especially with Irish and Scottish history, would be absolutely amazing. So we'll definitely have to get Sean on at some stage.
Yeah, sure you would. I could wear a coat. I could wear a early 14th century coat.
Oh,
nice.
Nice.
That would be great, because I don't have any of them. I used to have 12th century stuff and some 13th century stuff, but I don't anymore. So, but we started tearing Braveheart apart last week, and we're going to continue. We're going to continue this week.
Just too much.
There's so many wrongs. There's so many wrongnesses. It's a low hanging fruit, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For those of
the folk band, that sounds familiar.
Oh yeah, you've done gigs yourself, and Dave Swift did gigs for them before. You've worked with them.
No, I used to sing with a group called, I can't think of what it's called, Nuida. But then unfortunately the lead person who played like all the string instruments, he suffered a stroke, so we haven't performed together in several years. But we used to do quite a bit of like 16th century stuff, even some 18th century music, and earlier medieval stuff as well. I'd have to look them up. That sounds really good. I'll admit to being a big Rammstein fan.
Rammstein is so good.
Folk metal sounds amazing, because my friend is really into oh my God, I'm gonna blank on the name of it. It sounds like to me like what a fantasy novel should oh my God, what's it called? I'm gonna have to message her and be like, anyway, it doesn't matter, but I'll have to look them up. That sounds really good.
Definitely.
Interesting. Different kinds of music,
yeah. And then
only
20 quid. Yes, believe it or not, it's only 20 quid a month, and you get a class every Sunday. So more of you should be popping over there. Which reminds me as well, you're all giving out that I'm not dressed. Myself and Melissa, I'll shove the link back in there again. This link, by the way, doesn't work on Rachel's side. It depends how the settings are and stuff, but it will work on my side. So what you do is you pop into Google and just type this into Google, and hopefully it should pop up, which is help recreate a 15th century Irish ensemble. Just type
on GoFundMe, not Google, GoFundMe.
Yes.
Go to GoFundMe.
And type it inside there, GoFundMe. Is it .com? Yes, it's .com. GoFundMe.com. Pop in there, and myself, Rachel's doing the majority of the work right now. I should be doing more research into it, which I will do, because it's a part of another project as well. But yeah, pop over to GoFundMe. Help recreate a 15th century Irish ensemble. where Rachel will be, and myself and Rachel will be documenting a good half of it. I'll be doing a good chunk of the research. Well, I should be. Rachel's done the majority of the research already. In fact, it's just Rachel's bloody project at this point. I swear I will do more work. Stop hitting me. What was it called? What was it called? Rachel will be documenting her clothing, buying it, so on and so forth. So definitely head on over there, support that. It's going to be the recreation of Seamus McTormod. I just butchered that. I apologize for that. The 8th Earl of Desmond's creation. So we will be recreating that outfit. So definitely pop over there. And also on top of that as well, on Christmas Eve, the 24th, we're going to be doing, what was it we're doing again? Christmas. We're going to be doing, covering medieval Christmas. So we're going to be talking about everything, both Irish medieval Christmas and just Christmas in general during the medieval period. So definitely pop over, and that's going to be public as well. So both the Braveheart one and the Christmas one will be on YouTube and perhaps Facebook and Instagram as well, depending on how cranky they are, because you know how they can be. Yeah. And then that's us pretty much finished.
Yeah, so for those of you who are on my channel, I've got another live stream in an hour and 45 minutes. So I'll be back with my medieval sewing party, and I'll have a guest on, and he's going to be interviewing me. So if you want to see me get interviewed, that'll be in an hour and 45 minutes, and I'll just be continuing to sew the way. You guys know I can't do nothing while on a live stream, so it's not in my nature.
I think somebody asked if I do anything on YouTube. I don't yet, but I'm thinking about it. I am going to be on an episode of Talking Tudors podcast in January.
Wow,
so
very cool.
Hearing about 16th century gift exchange at Christmas. That's pretty much what that's going to be about. And I'm very active on Instagram, and my Instagram is, well, I'll just drop it in the chat. So how do I do that? How do I type in the chat? Seems to only be other people.
It's locked. Can you put it into private chat, and I can actually copy it over? If it's locked, just type the private.
Okay, Villa Vendetta said, will that be for UK time? So UK, no, so I think the dates that Philip just quoted were for US times, I think.
Yeah.
Middle of the night, UK.
Yeah, it's like 2-4 in the morning. And the reason I do apologize, it's just that's for us, that's the peak of our audience is around, 2-4 a.m. Irish and UK time. So I do apologize for that. I am doing events here and there, but God, like trying to get up at 6 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning and stuff for me. As you know yourself, it's 5 a.m. in the morning. So I do it here and there with the lads and stuff over the week and stuff. So I see what I can do. But other than that, guys, I think that's pretty much us. There's nothing else we need to cover today. So definitely, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. And slán go. Bye. See you.
Stay creative, everyone. Bye.